Hi YouTube. Saturday morning, just got done with the Uber. This week's video is about how the immigration in Fargo has affected our community. And it all started when I was telling my friend about that New York communist mayor. You know how I feel about it. He didn't care until his buddies were telling him about Minnesota has one too, who is American born. I believe he's only early 30s, but he's Somalian. And how he's talking about the same kind of stuff as the New York guy. Which at that point, I was telling my friend about the Netherlands guy that I gave a ride to last week, who was telling me that some of them countries over by where he's from have a 60% immigration. How do I say this? Their population is 60% immigrants. He said it's a problem and they're taking over. So I wanted to show you how in a fairly small community, the impact that it's had on us. I have some charts and graphs that I'm going to share with you because it's all about facts, remember? So I have my handy dandy phone here. And the first one I want to talk about is Fargo. This is a map of Fargo. The green area is new business, houses, you name it. It has grown. All of that has filled in the last 15 years. In the red, I'll explain that in a minute, but what I want you to know about Fargo is it has two sister cities, one being on the other side of the river, which is in Minnesota, which has a population of about 45,000, and then right next to it is West Fargo, which when I moved here I thought it was just West Fargo, because we say North Fargo and South Fargo too, but West Fargo is its own town, and that also is about 45,000. So Fargo itself, what they're saying is in 2025, of course, these are estimate numbers because our census was done in 2020, is approximately 138,000. I think it's more than that, but whatever. How they come up with these numbers, I'll never understand. In 2020, it said 126,000, which would be a growth of about 10,000. BS. And the reason I say that is because I have another one here that goes back to 1880, and I cut it off at 1970. From 70 to 80, it grew 7,000. From 80 to 90, it grew a little over 8,000. And then from 90 to 2000, well, to 2000 it says 90,000, which is a difference of 30,000. And in between there is a number 74,000. 10,000 to 10,000 to, well, we'll just round it up. 10,000 to 10,000 to 10,000 to 15,000 in 5 years, and then another 15,000 in 5 years, which was 20, which was 90,000. And then it went to 25, which is in 2020. 20 years later, it grew 35,000. So we're growing at least at a minimum of 15,000 a year, which in a small community is very noticeable. I mean, right now, I think we're bursting at the seams. As far as the Minnesota guy running for mayor, like I said, he's Somalian. And the reason for the jump in the 90s was because we had an NGO, it's not a charity, but I found where they had considered themselves a private-public partnership. We're bringing in these immigrants, these Somalian immigrants, into Fargo and into Minneapolis. Minneapolis is recorded to have about 87, we'll just say 90,000, and Fargo is only supposed to have like 5, which I think is totally bogus. But they were also bringing in Bosnians, a smaller amount of Bosnians. But about 2000, it became kind of a fever pitch. The community was starting to talk about it. They were starting to complain about it amongst themselves. And it was just to the point where enough is enough already. Is kind of what it was on the radio. And interestingly enough, the gal that ran the Lutheran Social Services was interviewed about it, and she said, oh no, it's all good. But it wasn't a few months later that they basically shut down after they built this great big beautiful building south of town, millions of dollars worth. And I heard they had hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of art hanging on the wall. That's how they spend their money. Not to mention the people that were running around the office in there that were applying for government grants said that they went bankrupt. And they're not bankrupt because they're still in business in Minnesota. But here's a little clippet that I clipped out that says, they hailed from Somalia, Sudan, Bhutan, and Iraq. I was surprised to learn that almost 8% of Fargo's population was foreign-born. Largely refugees settled through Lutheran Social Services of North Dakota, the only federally approved resettlement organization in the state. In recent years, North Dakota has led the nation in per capita refugee settlement. Yeah, they went bankrupt. Yeah, sure they did. The next list is a list that I started to make shortly after I started doing Uber. Of all the countries that I have picked up, and mind you, I just started doing Uber in February. Middle of February. March, April, May, June. 5 months. These are the people that I have picked up. Although, it seems to me that I'm picking up less and less of them. I don't know if they just skedaddled out of here when Trump said that they would buy them a plane ticket and give them $1,000 to go back home. I don't know. But I have been picking up less of them. But I was completely shocked by the many different ones that there are. Okay, anyways, this goes on to say, in addition to Bosnians, Fargo has also a significant population of Vietnamese, Sudanese, Somali, and Kurdish. And it says here that Fargo played a key role in resettling over 1,300 Bosnian refugees, according to whatever, blah, 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 between 97 and 2001. And we were having an issue with them because they were going around stealing catalytic converters and copper off of things. It was a big problem. And the Somalians and the Bosnians didn't get along. And there was a lot of crime, and there was a lot of in the news kind of stuff. And they were giving them driver's license. My friend owns a business that you teach people to drive. And I think one session is like 3 days and you go for a couple hours. And he was complaining to Lutheran Social Services. They need more time than that. Anyways, they were buying them vehicles and they were getting all kinds of assistance. I'm sure they still do. But getting back to Minnesota, they have an 8.5% of Minnesota's population is foreign-born, including the refugees, Somalian, Ethiopian, Afghanistan, and a large Hmong population. And the only reason that I am talking about Minnesota is because they have that mayor over there. And like I said, I think he's in his early 30s. So he was born here, but at the same time, they don't believe the same things. Their belief system is different. Otherwise, why would he be talking about communist stuff like the New York guy? This is a new article, January 2024. Number of refugees settling in Minnesota rising, with more on the way. I started to Google health problems with the immigration. And this is what I got. I found that highly suspicious. So these are the ones that are prevalent: tuberculosis, HIV, hepatitis B and C, vaccine preventable diseases, measles and other vaccine preventable diseases, which I guess, if they get vaccinated when they get here. Okay. Malaria and parasitic infections. And the other thing that I thought was pretty interesting is they're mentally happier before they get here, which this is completely understandable. But the longer that they're here, mentally they deteriorate. Now, if I went over there anywhere, any one of these places, I think that my mental health would deteriorate too, because I'm not at home. That's not home. Everybody around me, their culture's different. Everything is different. And mind you, I am not prejudiced. Not in the least. I grew up on the reservation. My sister has a half black child who is my niece, and my brother is part Native. So there's that. I pick up people of different nationalities all the time. I'm friendly and nice to all of them. I don't treat them weird or anything. They're normal people to me. The ones that talk, we talk. The ones that don't talk, we don't talk. It just is what it is. But in a community the size of ours, when it starts to take a toll on us, it feels like an invasion. That's what it feels like. I mean, if a bunch of people moved into your house that you didn't know, that lived differently than you, that didn't believe in the same things that you believed in, wouldn't you feel invaded? Well, that's kind of the way I think we were feeling 10 years ago when Lutheran Social Services decided to go out of business, because they knew that they had gone just a little bit too far. And mind you, back in the 80s, this town was 98% white. Not that I have anything against people of color, but it is kind of a shock to our culture when you're flooded with a bunch of people that you aren't used to. Basically is what it boils down to. And Americans, that's where I'm at today. If you're black and you're an American, okay, great. But if you're from Africa, you need to go home. That's the way I feel about it. Now, I spent a couple hours this last week driving around and taking pictures of businesses that have been opened by immigrants. Now, remember the map I showed you, the little red square, which is probably, I don't know, I'll just say 2 miles by 2 miles. Most of these businesses, 90% of these businesses, are within that red area. As you can see, everything from a car dealership to lots and lots and lots of grocery stores, because that's what they do. They have markets where they come from. They sell food. That's what they do. Like I said, auto dealerships, there's been several, and I didn't take pictures of all of them because I don't remember where they all are, because they move around, is churches. They open their own churches. And you can also see on this list that they have places that these people can go to get different types of assistance. Integration Center, New American Resource Center, but lots and lots of grocery stores, which is weird. And I know that 8 years ago we drove around, and I know we counted up like 20 of them. And this is something else. The Oriental massages, I wasn't going to take any pictures of them, but I did take a picture of one. Because we didn't have, and I've seen like 3 or 4 of them when I was driving around town, Oriental massage places. The thing that comes to mind with those are these trafficked women that have come over the border. Because most of our massage places prior to this, and I understand that we're growing and every town has massage parlors, but they were mostly rented space in a beauty shop or, something like that. Local people, not of Asian orientation. And then we've always had a fairly decent amount of Mexican immigrants because we have sugar beet crops here and stuff, so they would be more seasonal. When I first moved to Fargo, which was 30 years ago, they had an issue with gangs and stuff, and they got rid of them, cleaned them out, and they lived in Minnesota because the benefits are so much better over there. But anyways, they got rid of those. But we do have some that are here year round. But what was interesting to me when I was doing the drive around thing is we have several things other than restaurants. When I first moved here, there wasn't any Mexican restaurants. We had 2 Indian-owned, actually, Mexican restaurants. And then when one opened up, people loved it, and they were authentic. And then there were like 2 brothers or relations somehow. And then they opened up a second one. And that one was super popular, but that one has since had a fire. But in the meantime, there has been, what do we got here? I see a Mexican market, or no, not, no, I can't, the Katrina. So we have more Mexican restaurants, and I have dropped off people at these places to work that only speak Spanish. But the one that really, really surprised me, I just noticed the other day, was this Ahmed Jewelry. I can't even pronounce it. And then it's got some crazy, like, what would you call it? Writing underneath of it that's not American. So that was interesting. And Himalayan Yak, that's a restaurant also. This one is a restaurant. This supermarket here, look how big it is. And it's right, there's one way in, one way out, and it's on a main artery in town. It's like, and they can't drive very well, so it's like, you're taking your life in your hands when you go by there. But I think you get the idea. North Dakota is a red state, but we've been teetering on purple. It was red during this last election. But Fargo being the largest town, city in the state, if you want to include West Fargo, that would put it at 80,000. The whole state only has 800,000. So they have Somalians in these other cities too. And I know that they brought family members and stuff over. So as they grow, can you just see how the whole state would turn blue? And then pretty quick before you know it, we would have a Somalian, natural born citizen, which was one of my biggest gripes. But if they were born in 1990, it's 2025, they would be 35 years old. There you go. Natural born citizen. Running for mayor with communist ideas. That's why they need to go home, because I don't want to become communist. And one other number I wanted to point out to you guys is they're saying that, oh, let me get this down. They are saying that in Minnesota, there are an estimated 81,000 undocumented immigrants. Is that included in the 80-some thousand that they actually brought over? Or are them the ones that are the undocumented ones? That would be my question for that. But what else I wanted to get to is as your population changes and you start to pay attention, these are the things that you'll notice. Fargo police car says, built on trust, accountability, and inclusion. They start sneaking this stuff in. They recently, during COVID, after the George Floyd thing, had hired a DEI at the city, and I know the guy was making like a fortune. They finally fired 6.2 positions, including those within the DEI department, and they did this in September of last year, which became equivalent to like $600,000 worth of our budget. The DEI guy was making a fortune. But 6.2 people making $600,000 a year. So the city's kind of gotten rid of that program. And that was, what, September, before Trump was even elected. Some were complaining, some weren't. The guy that was running the guy that they hired. His name was, I guess I'm not going to say his name, but he has since formed a nonprofit organization to continue related work in the community. And he did not come from Fargo. They hired him from out of state. And with also our police chief came from, I think, Wisconsin, somewhere east of here. We're noticing that he's a little bit blue too. Because, you know, they're not arresting the shoplifters and the petty crime criminals. Most of our criminals are, like my son, aggravated assault. Most of our, although I think I mentioned in another video, they have like 10,000 warrants out that they don't have room for. And also, NDSU has a DEI program. NDSU is our college. How far they come with that or where they're at with that, I'm not sure. But the point I'm trying to make is small community, red community. At one point, we're 98% white, Christian, farming community that, you know, we're red. All these people move, they start sliding in this stuff, DEI this, DEI that, inclusion on the side of a police car, bringing in refugees, using up your resources, and before you know it, you got a communist running for government. That is what the topic of conversation has been at coffee for the last few days. I can see in a bigger city where you probably wouldn't notice it as much. 10 years ago when it became a problem with just the Bosnians and the Somalians, it's not the preference here. It's a change in our culture. It's a change in our city. And even since the BLM thing, a lot of people, I assume, you know, I picked them up from Minneapolis, from Chicago. People are trying to get out of those cities. I've even picked up a couple people from New York who just Google, where's a good place to move that's red. They want to go to a red state, so here they come. Californians moving west. North Dakota's got a good economy right now. Businesses are moving here. Amazon is here now in the last, I think that's only been open maybe less than 10 years for sure. We have Microsoft here. You know, we have a good economy here. So you might want to take a peek at what's going on in your city. Because the last thing you want is somebody who's basically communist running it. I'm just saying. And I'll catch you guys next week.